Hey, disease and public health kiddos. So let's talk about the broader implications of the hygiene hypothesis and the old friends hypothesis. Again, intentional infection with live helminths and helminth secretions, again, the chemicals that they secrete to regulate your immune system, has the potential for treating autoimmune diseases. There's been a couple different research studies in this, and they've had success in some places, been unsuccessful in others. But autoimmune diseases are definitely on the rise in developing countries, and so this could be a potential treatment. Helminth infection may leave hosts vulnerable to co-infection, though, so this is important and not something I mentioned earlier, but I've emphasized that the helminths tend to kind of tone down your immune system, right? They prevent hypersensitivity to self-antigens in particular, but also just calm down your general immune system, which, while helpful in terms of thinking about allergies and autoimmune diseases, might not be helpful if you're suddenly up against something like HIV or another pathogen, right? You might want your full force ready to go. And so they can also decrease the efficacy of vaccines because your immune system is being a little hampered, might not be making those memory T cells and memory B cells that you need for later immunity. And we need to further clarify what is meant by the hygiene hypothesis. This is one of those very misunderstood things that a lot of people take it as like, okay, well, I need to stop washing my hands. I need to stop cooking my food. That is not true, right? Those are all significant advances that humans have made that have allowed us to continue to stay healthy and exist on this planet. We need to protect ourselves against bacterial infections. And so there are a couple things that contradict the hygiene and old friends hypothesis. This is a graph kind of just showing data of trends in allergies and allergic diseases and reactions, and you can see they're plateauing. If what hygiene hypothesis is getting at, you would expect to continue to see a rise in things like allergies, right? If our immune system is just increasingly overreacting to things, but it turns out that they've actually plateaued overall. So there's a lot of other things that could be complicating this, right? Have we retained regulatory networks from our evolutionary past, right? Rather than depending on helminths to do that, maybe there's something else, the mechanism that is present. Is the human immune system adjusting, right? We should be continuing to evolve, so maybe this is just that step in showing that. Also turns out that a lot of our nomadic ancestors, right, who were talking about as having these heavy parasite loads, since they had very sparse populations, they weren't living with domesticated animals, right? They were still hunter-gatherers. They might have actually had far fewer encounters with old friends and parasites than previously thought. So a lot of the information we have, like I mentioned, those Viking, like old latrines and pits, were all post-agricultural revolution when people were starting to live around animals a lot more. So there's not a lot of data we have, and parasite loads were probably a lot less before agriculture became widely practiced by humans. And so what are modern day nomadic cultures showing, right? That might be a good way to study this. Is there are some modern day nomadic cultures, people who don't regularly live around animals, and might maybe that reflects our ancient ancestors a little better, and so do they have high or low infections? And again, I want to emphasize that you still need to wash your hands, right? The hygiene hypothesis is not saying that we're being overly hygienic and we need to stop, using antibacterial soap and all these things, though again, that is a step you often hear about, but we still need to take steps to protect ourselves. These worms and other pathogens can still be very, very harmful. And again, helminth infections increase the vulnerability to co-infections. It's really interesting that huge amounts of funding and effort have been put into preventing things like malaria and HIV and tuberculosis, right, a bacterial infection, in a lot of developing countries. And so they found that deworming people may be a key tool to employing this, right? Because again, those helminth infections, those worms, are down-regulating the immune system and making those individuals more vulnerable to viruses, parasites, and bacterial infections. And so maybe deworming them can help the immune system fight against these more effectively and prevent them or eradicate them. And again, one big campaign is to vaccinate against a lot of these diseases, especially things like hepatitis. And so if helminths, again, are down-regulating immune function, then a vaccine might not be as effective, right? You're not developing those B cell and T cell memory cells. And so they found, again, that deworming prior to vaccination has shown to increase long-term immunity. And so new vaccines need to be developed and, more importantly, distributed with that in mind, that people have to go through a deworming process first and then receive the vaccine to help make sure that it is effective in the long term. So all very interesting to think about. I hope you found this interesting as well. You'll be doing a little bit of reading about helminths and the hygiene hypothesis for homework. Thanks.